It's such a health element. It's incredible.
And I can move them to, so if you're going to get your place where you're comfortable, and then I can move the brain models over if you wanted to manipulate those or.
I'll stand up for them. Once I gotta start getting back up.
And strengthen your legs.
Everything. You start, navigating again. Most people do it unconsciously or subconsciously. I got to be very conscious of what I'm doing. And training the brain. It's incredible. Look, I'm still walking and talking.
Yeah.
The more I'm used to actually pretty loquacious. The reason she's here, I go off into the tangent, I say, just do this.
Yeah. The offstage
You're
signaling.
good.
Do you want to press the forward button just to make sure it's responding? Nope. Let me see. Let's try it closer.
Technology. Maybe I think that to be deemed from a different.
Should it be in the, is it coming through this computer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi.
No, I think I overloaded the bus. I couldn't handle it. My mouse stopped working. I can put it on.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
First it'll go to, that's probably the best, I don't know if I've seen that. Then it'll go.
If anything, I can sit up here and just you can say, next, next.
Okay.
Do I need to do this first, ready? Or is this the one that you said preemptively?
I come prepared. Or try to.
Go for you have like your hot water.
I don't think I've seen it. Maybe
Carol.
that's just.
Yeah, I'll do it.
There you go.
That's our base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we get it? Yep, there we go.
Where was I beaming it? The wrong line?
No, it was just kind of had to reset the little USB stick.
1, 2, 3. There we go. Here.
Yeah. You know.
A few people, a few minutes to file in.
It's 11 right now. So students. One more time. How's it?
Yeah, they'll try. Finding parking downtown.
I just,
We're right up.
no, no, I just was checking to see if it,
Although Nicole was great. She
it starts with
used
these.
to do like Coral Herman. She was called Tyler.
I'll have it sit down, we'll put it on the table.
I don't know that he's done it.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
You don't have to do it. You'll need to.
No, I didn't. Oh yeah, we did all that part. We did all that, I just haven't signed the actual document.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming to the guest speaker talk today. My name is Corey Alexander. I'm an instructor here. I teach primarily anatomy, physiology, and microbiology. I see a lot of familiar faces. Maybe some of you will see in the future. So I'm here to introduce Wade Nasholds, who is an adjunct instructor for us. He was with us right around before COVID hit, right? In 2020. And so he kind of worked with us during COVID, and then he had experienced a stroke, which he'll talk with you about, and he's back with us teaching some online courses. So he's able to still contribute to our department. So I'll introduce you Wade Nasholds, and he's going to do our presentation. If you haven't already signed in, and then grab some refreshments, and we'll get started. All right.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. So yeah, I was here at RCC teaching just when COVID broke out, and I was doing hybrid online and in person until February of 2022, actually. So I got through a few terms teaching the introductory biology classes. And I think one summer I came in to do one of the anatomy and physiology classes. But then I was walking down to a beach in Waldport, Oregon, to meet my daughter and her boyfriend. My wife was coming up behind me. The dog and I were walking down a path to the beach in February 22, and without warning, I just went down on the trail. And fortunately, there was people in front of me who heard me hit the turf, and they came back and they helped me up. I thought it was okay. I said, no, everything's okay. The dog was trying to, come on, let's go. I said, no, just you do. And fortunately, unfortunately, they got me up. I felt okay, but something wasn't quite right. And then just at that time, my daughter and her boyfriend were coming up from the beach on the trail I was heading down. And my wife was coming from the truck back in the parking lot. And we all kind of met in a strange way. And I was trying to get my balance and stuff and try to walk back to the truck. And again, the dog was still going, come on, I want to still go. And I remember my daughter going, Dad, you're walking sideways. And I could see, I said, really? Yeah. And then my wife goes, right, he's going to the emergency room. Something is not right. And so she quickly instructed my daughter's boyfriend, Christian, to get on the phone and find out where the nearest hospital was. And at that point, I was going, no, I think I'm okay. And then they both, my daughter and my wife went, no, you are going to the emergency room. So they took me up to Newport, which is north of Waldport. And they got me into the emergency room. And there they had an excellent team that got right onto the situation. And they could see what was happening. And I said, yeah. So to make that story, shorten that a bit and get on to the more biological aspects. I remember the emergency room doctor said, Wade, you are having a serious stroke. Yes, because I was cracking a few jokes or whatever. You were having a serious stroke. That straightened me out. And so they did, I'll get to it a little later, they did some scans. And so anyway, here we go. Let me get going. I need to go off on tangents these days. So just to start off very basic, a stroke, to broadly define it, is the disruption of the blood flow to a part of the brain. Symptoms can come on quickly, and I can vouch for that. And without warning, I can vouch for that. Recognizing stroke symptoms, this is very important, and seeking treatment quickly can lead to a better outcome. Well, I'm glad my wife and my daughter insisted on getting me to that emergency room. So, broadly speaking, there's two types. A hemorrhagic stroke, and this occurs when a blood vessel in the brain ruptures and bleeds into the brain. An ischemic stroke is when there's a blockage in the blood supply to the brain. I had an ischemic stroke, and I can immediately tell that from these scans that they did. That mine was an ischemic stroke, a bit more on that later. So either way, either whether it's a rupture or a blockage, it prevents blood, with all its wonderful nutrients and oxygen, that amazing molecule, from reaching the brain's tissues. So a little bit on the pathology, in other words, the damage that's done. It disrupts calcium homeostasis. immediately. And so there's a release of calcium ions into the brain tissue cells. And this activates oxidative damage. And there's oxygen radicals that are released within the brain, and thus these are quite reactive little molecules, and thus there's extensive localized cell damage. Okay, so let's see. There. So where did this all happen? Where was the scene of the crime? Right there. It was in my middle cerebral artery that this happened. Basically, the clot left, I think it left my heart, actually. A little more on that later. It kind of got up into there and broke into pieces, then scattered about down some of the other smaller arteries. But that was the one that carried it. It branches off from the carotid, and that got into the middle cerebral. You can see here there's a bunch of ways the little pieces could have gone. But that's the main one. I keep seeing that in all my medical reports, the MCA. That's where the site of the, that's where the clot went. So it was a clot, because remember, that's where you're going to be depriving the brain of oxygen. And the clot broke up into pieces, and the little pieces went to different parts of the brain. So, to focus back on, the whole thing about getting information out there about strokes, and why people should be very aware of if they happen to see people showing these symptoms, they really have to remember this acronym: be fast. If you see somebody who's out of balance, and or if an individual themselves feel out of balance, which I kind of did, I mostly thought I was okay. Blurred vision, I really don't remember that. So B-E, face, a facial droop or an uneven smile on either side. And then A for arms, arm and leg weakness. That's what I had. That's why I was walking sideways, limping sideways. Speech. I thought I was speaking okay, but I don't know. I might not have been speaking all that perfectly. But then the crucial thing is time. Oops. To get someone to the hospital. So really, the quickest way is to call an ambulance. Well, then do it. Dial 911, because there's a time frame going on here that is crucial. Fortunately, my wife and my daughter and boyfriend got me to the emergency room there in Florence. Here we go. You're going against the clock here. So the suspected stroke patient arrives at the emergency department. Time is ticking though. They do an initial evaluation. They try to get stable. And they're trying to find out whether you're eligible for this thing called TPA. It's a clot buster, is the sort of common term for it. We'll get to that in a second. But, oh, sorry, there it is. So the time needed to get that TPA, tissue plasminogen activated, that's the, it's an enzyme basically. They commonly is called the clot buster. It'll break up clots for an ischemic stroke. Shouldn't be given when there's a hemorrhagic stroke, because then there might be a little bit of help from the clot blocking the blood is coming out. And so they have to evaluate it very carefully to make sure you're eligible to get the clot buster, eligibility for TPA, etc. They did this immediately when I got in. They notified the stroke team. They were right onto it. Then they rushed me up into get scans, a CT scan and an MRI. They gave me both. Again, time is ticking. It all happens very quickly. Then the doctors interpret the imaging of both the CT scan and the MRI to see what's going on. And then they finally give the okay for the TPA. So they gave me that I just remember they gave me it both initially as, well, they gave it to me right away as an IV. They hooked me up and they gave it to me right away. There's another name for it, the Altaplay. There's a little name, ASC, you might remember that, for enzymes. Just as long as this is all happening within 60 minutes is crucial. So, and that did happen with me. It was all very quick. They were very, very efficient there at the emergency room. And so, that was crucial. Now, I've already mentioned the two main types of stroke, and it's the ischemic, which is mine, which is the clot blocking arteries and arterioles, the smaller vessels of the artery class. There's a little graphic of the hemorrhagic. That's where you get a break in the vessel and the blood escapes. Now, there is something called a transient ischemic attack. Now that's, if anything, that was the only warning I had months before. There is a blockage, but it's temporary, transient. And what happened there is I woke up one morning and I had kind of a numbness in my arm. I couldn't really use the left arm very well. Enough I could use the right because I'm right-handed. I felt okay, but when I got back home for that, I called my doctor and he described the terms and he said, yeah, I think you've had a TIA. Now, a lot of time went by because this wasn't an emergency situation, although if someone feels any of those symptoms, they should go in and play it safe. I kind of, because I was still quite functional, in fact, I drove back after I drove from where we were. But that was kind of a warning months before. And the acronym for this is a TIA. So I had a TIA, and he put me on a blood thinner and something to keep cholesterol and some triglycerides from building up in the blood. He gave me a statin. He said, this is routine. Someone who's had a TIA, we put you on statins right away. Immediately, I'm going to get you on a mild blood thinner, but we get you on statins because that's the protocol for that. So that, and then it was months later I have what I call the big one. So we initially had this TIA, and I did the right thing. I at least called the doctor, which again is kind of you get kind of a, I don't want to say a second chance, but you have it's transient. It comes and goes. And that's what this one did. Now, when they took some of the scans, these are the classic images that can come up from an ischemic stroke, an acute ischemic stroke I had. There are areas of lightness that they can see, and I believe this is an MRI. And there's areas of darkness where they know that they give you something where they can detect where the blood flow has been inhibited. So basically there, and there, it kind of gets confirmed with different, you do it with different, with a contrast and without a contrast, they call it. So they're very good. They have MRI, CT, and they basically can tell exactly where it's happening, at least the region, and then they can take action from there. What to do, and they gave me the TPA once they saw this. So I was on my way, hopefully, to getting by with this. Now, they got me up to, from that emergency room over there, and it was Florence. Newport, sorry, thank you. That's my wife, Carol, always backs me up on the memory issues. Thank you, Carol. They got me over to Albany Medical Hospital, which is to the east. The people at Newport, they got me in an ambulance and took me over to Albany, where they had an ICU for stroke patients, intensive care. And they just followed up with, checking me every few minutes. They, get me up every 10, 15 minutes. They, how many fingers do I have up? Where are you? What's your name? what do you think has happened to you? They ask you a bunch of questions to see if you're functioning okay up here. And I largely was, but I was also having some issues, which I still have to this day. Basically, from those early times, even to this day, I have semi-paralysis of my limbs on my left side. They call it hemiparesis. And as I sit here now, I'm okay. It's like you're functional, but and my right arm's absolutely fine. But because the stroke happened on the right side of the brain, you tend to get the symptoms over on the left. The same if something had happened on the left, you get the symptoms on the right because of the switch around that happens in the central nervous system coming up the spine. And so being right-handed, in a way I was fortunate, that's really more my left side that was affected because I can still use my right no problem. But the left now is semi-paralyzed and not as nimble as it could be. But it's, I'm getting there. I'm having occupational therapy. I've had physical therapy. I walk with a bit of a limp. But that's nothing compared to not being able to walk at all. It was real serious. I have increased sensitivity on my whole left side to cold and hot. This again because it affects the somatosensory areas on that side of the brain, the sensory areas. So to me, sometimes I swear it's very, very cold, like water or the outside, and it's not that bad. In fact, sometimes I think my left hand is cold, but it's not. I'll say to my wife or whoever, is my hand cold? And I go, no. But my brain is telling me it is cold. It's not. Anyway, so I have these increased sensitivity, only on the left side though, the leg included. I also have this thing called, the acronym is CPSP. This is really my major issue now. Central post-stroke pain. I have chronic, everyday pain in my left limb. These joints are like always kind of on fire. In my hand, my wrist. In my leg, my ankle and my toe joints feel like they're on fire. It's pain all the time. Now, it's neurogenic pain. That literally means created by the brain. So the brain, what's interesting is, and I found this fascinating once I learned about it, it's the brain making the pain. In other words, there's nothing physically wrong. I mean, you break a bone, you have a physical injury, you get pain. But this is something the brain, because of the stroke, is not functioning correctly, and it's actually sending signals that there is pain. And that's what you perceive. To you, it's real. I mean, this is real pain to me, but there's no real physical reason for it. I don't have any broken bones. I don't have any outside injuries. So it's difficult for them to diagnose completely. In fact, there's still not a set protocol for them to establish whether someone has central post-stroke pain, other than a patient saying, well, I am in pain. And most of the pharmaceuticals that they have for pain don't work. This is again evidence that it's the brain creating the pain, and sending the wrong signal to a place it really shouldn't go. Every thing that I've tried hasn't worked as far as the pharmaceutical for like peripheral chronic pains. But that's a daily thing they deal with, but it's also not only the pain, but just the effect it's had on my brain. The whole stroke has affected me psychologically. I've had mood changes. I tend to be more short-tempered, less patient than I used to be. My wife has helped me out a lot with these things. And she feels I've had a personality change, but I still feel like I'm me. I just got to overcome some of these things I'm dealing with, and I'll probably get back to the old me, for better or for worse. But it's, and I have found this all morbidly fascinating. With my background in anatomy and physiology and even chemistry, as far as looking at the chemical and biochemical aspects of it, I found it interesting First, I didn't accept this chronic post-stroke pain because my occupational therapist first said, yeah, the brain is creating the pain. And she explained it all to me. And at first I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you have nothing physically wrong. You haven't broken a bone. Your brain has memories of pain that you've had on the left side. And now it's remembering those, trying to protect you. It's oversensitive to any situation you're in, and it still feels it has to protect you. And so it's sending out warnings to let you know that you have your left side might be in trouble when it's really not. And that's the wrong signal. But I've had situations where like when I'm cutting, I still cook and stuff. If I get out a sharp knife, I'm chopping something, I'm very careful, but I'll get little shots of pain in my left arm. And that's my brain going, oh, be careful, there's a knife there. It's weird, but I've had situations, or if I'm walking down a road and there's a car coming up on my left, which I walk on roads very cautiously, I'll get pain shooting down my arm and my leg, because my brain is picking up the sound of the car, and it's going, danger, danger, and it's warning me that it's coming. So not only have I heard it, I'm also getting these pain signals. But that again is evidence that it's neurogenic pain. The brain is creating that. It's trying to protect me. It's gone a little bit too far. Because now, not only does it in situations like that, it doesn't, even as I'm sitting here now and everything's okay. It's kind of like on overdrive. It doesn't make those sounds. But there you go. So, and there's the little, it's not fully functional. I walk, other than the slight limp that I have, I walk fairly normally. In fact, the pain is slowly getting better through my occupational therapy and through my, I'm jumping ahead a little here, sorry. Well, here we go. My prognosis, the outlook is very good. Through my occupational therapy, acupuncture, and doing things like mindfulness, exercises, focusing in to calm the brain down. And assure it that it's okay, there's really no danger. Stop sending me the signal when there's really no need. It's affecting things, and the brain can reestablish new pathways. When there's been damage, it can then reroute signals. It's very, they call it neuroplastic. It can reroute, send out more connections, and reroute things, and that's an improvement for it. It's actually getting better. There's also something called neurogenesis. It's neuroplastic in that it can reroute things, but it's also neuroplastic in that it can actually, and this really shocked me, there's neurons that can, for years I always taught that no, once you damage a neuron, it's done, it's over with, it's dead. But there is evidence that the brain has these little, they're kind of like embryonic stem cells that can go to the area of damage and get things going again. So the main thing is that it's rerouting the signals. It's sending out, the neurons are sending out extensions to touch other neurons to help the brain, reestablish connections. But there's also, to a degree, more neurons coming about. And then there's the other, I don't know what you've gotten to as far as cells in the brain. There's the cells that are responsible for the brain, the glial cells, they're the support cells in the brain. They can, and the brain has always been able to do this, create more the support cells to keep things healing. So my brain is slowly healing. It is getting better. Like I walk and talk. I walk relatively normally. I talk pretty much like I used to. At least that's what people tell me. Just to reiterate some of these things. So there's the neuroplasticity and damage. brain can reorganize, taking over function from the damaged area, taking existing neural connection and forming new ones. That's the new pathways, allowing for restoration of function, primarily through the growing of axon. The axons will sprout more synapses and increased blood flow. For some of the smaller vessels, to get more blood vessels to surprise, and it forms what they call a penumbra, sort of an area around the infarct zone where the infarction occurred. Those would be the infarct. That's where the brain was deprived. This is sort of like, so probably there was a more serious area inward than in this outward area. I mean, neurology is a fascinating field, from what I can gather and read about. But there's big healing going on in those areas to help this brain get back to normal, which I'm thankful for. My moods are getting a bit better. But, like I said, I gotta make a little plug for the therapies I've been getting. For anybody who wants to go to occupational physical therapy, they've really helped. I'm still having occupational therapy, and I'm also having acupuncture, which I used to, Mr. Scientist used to say, oh, acupuncture, that can't be true, that can't be true, a bunch of needles. It's true, it helps. So acupuncture has been big in helping this be improved in terms of the reduction of the pain, which just in recent weeks has shown enough improvement where I can walk a mile a day. I try to do a mile a day of walking. And so all those therapy, I call it my multi-pronged approach to healing. One more little note on that. I am taking, the only pharmaceutical I'm taking as far as the Western medicine is, strangely enough, an antidepressant. They have found that certain antidepressants help with the pain. And they haven't figured out anywhere near why. The one I'm taking is called Cymbalta. It's a SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, usually used for depression. They have found that it helps this central post-stroke pain become relieved. And what it's doing in there, they have no idea, but it is helping. Between that, the occupational therapy, and the acupuncture, things are improving. The pain is slowly fading. Okay, this is kind of a summary slide of where it's a little long-winded here, which I tend to do now. Like I said, I'm a little more loquacious than I used to be before the stroke. So, there's that MCA. There's different portions of it, the middle cerebral artery, the superior division. So this is where it all sort of happened. There's a lot. The vascular system of the brain is incredible. And all right, I had a big problem. Go up into the MCA, and then all the sort of branches that come off of that. Pretty much every lobe in my brain was affected. When I first saw a neurologist, when I got back to Medford, he put up the full scans, the MRIs and the CT scans. He said, see all the white spots? Those are everywhere you have deprivation of oxygen and nutrients to your brain. That looks like a war zone. He goes, yep, pretty much all of your lobes were hit to some degree. Luckily, nothing major in some of the crucial areas. But he did point out, too, that the thalamic area, which is involved in pain transmission, that was affected, and that's probably part of this whole central post-stroke pain. The brain sending the wrong signals to the wrong places at the wrong time. And that's, if I recall, it's more like internal in here, the thalamus. It's not labeled here. It's more like in this region. That's thalamic. So, was a fairly sizable clot that broke up, affected a wide number of regions of my brain. It's getting better, both through its own mechanisms and through me doing what I can do as far as therapies. You'll have access to this slide. I guess they're recording this too. But this is what's crucial to me as far as how the brain can heal itself after a stroke. As long as it isn't too serious. I mean, sometimes strokes, they're so serious, they hit the crucial areas so quickly that, there's no chance, or somebody doesn't get this TPA in time. And so, it is capable of healing itself to a degree. There's a lot of research going on now as far as how to replace the damaged cells. Now, I did say that I read an article one time where the brain itself sends little, proto embryonic brain cells that are residual in there, supposedly. I don't know how much they've proven that. But they're also trying new things where they are putting in stem cells. They're putting in embryonic stem cells, or these things called induced pluripotent stem cells. So they're also surgically putting in stem cells because they're pluripotent. At the very least, they can form new neurons. But there's still a long way to go. And they also can be involved in making new blood vessels. That's the angiogenesis, neoangiogenesis, to support the healing. But it is an incredible organ, using all that neuroplasticity to learn new skills. I got to retrain my brain, basically. A lot of things have been lost, not completely, at least partially. But it's now, I talk to it a lot. Like when I'm walking through a crowded area, I have to make myself aware of people on the left, chair on the left. And I've got to make sure that the brain is hearing me. It's strange, but it's interesting. Okay. Okay, to sort of summarize here, although it may seem to be too early, starting rehab efforts within the first 48 hours after a stroke lead to great improvements in recovery. I started fairly immediately, even when I was at that Albany hospital. Okay. Now, after a stroke, people experience a range of effects, including physical disabilities and personality changes. Key feature of this behavior is it's a change from how the person used to be before the stroke. But these therapies can have significant improvements, as I've kind of already mentioned down here in print. It's important to recognize that these changes may become a new normal for the person. Other therapies that may help with the personality changes include solution-focused therapy, problem-solving therapy, cognitive, so this is the more psychological treatments that one can have. Acceptance and commitment therapy, interpersonal therapy, and then mindfulness. I am practicing mindfulness and the commitment therapy. Accepting certain things is a big thing for me, because at first I say, no, I don't know about that. Is that really going to work? But then once I got over that hump, I was more accepting, and things are improving. So a lot of it sometimes psychological as far as not really wanting to do things. You got to get over that. If you know someone who's had a stroke, to help them get there is very important. Okay, so the big takeaway, behavior and personality changes after stroke are due to changes in the brain or emotional, during recovery. For some people, these changes can be temporary and improve over time with rehabilitation. For others, personality changes may be longer lasting. So this will be in the things that are available afterwards, in case you know someone who may have had a stroke, hopefully not in the future. But there's a lot of resources available to help people, for both the survivors and the caregivers, like my wife. There's been a lot that she has done and is continuing to do as far as helping me out. And I'm relatively, you know, I've still got most of my functions, or at least partially, but I still need help both physically and psychologically. I mean, she had to help me finish buttoning up my shirt today before we came. It was taking me too long because of the semi-paralysis in my left hand. Okay, but there are things just not to say to a younger stroke survivor, or any stroke survivor for that matter. Wait, you're too young to have a stroke. No one's too young. They can happen even in babies in the womb, which is kind of scary. Or to say, you don't look like you've had a stroke. And I've had people say that to me. Wow, you're looking great. You're talking great. You sound like the old Wade. Well, the old Wade kind of got snatched away. I don't really know that. New Wade is establishing himself to be the old Wade. Are you better now? I would hate to say that to a degree because it takes a long time. Because are you better now can come later on, but to do it really quickly, like within days, weeks, are you better now? Well, it takes a long time, so it's okay. It takes a long time. Yeah, I get some headaches and I feel tired a lot. But then, you know, it's also not a good idea to say to a stroke person about someone who you know that's had a stroke. Well, they're up doing a marathon. They got back to work quickly. They can do all sorts of amazing things, but because you really don't want to hear that. Because you're taking a long time to get into the recovery, to go through the recovery process yourself. You always seem fine when you are with me. And not to call them a stroke survivor, a stroke victim. That's because they're survived. I've survived this thing. I don't view myself as a victim. I view myself as a survivor who's making progress every day, with a lot of help, of course, but also doing, you know, largely what I've been told to do as far as the medical care and the ancillary, you know, the assistance that they have for me to improve. So it's a lot up to the individual too to make the progress to get back. Okay, all right. Thank you for getting these models out, Cora, but I think that I can at least walk over and have a little drink here.
That's fine.
Yeah, I wanted to get, I think the overheads did the job. But basically, as far as sensations and stuff, all the lobes, frontal, and that also affects behavior. Parietal, occipital, my vision is fine, so the occipital lobe luckily wasn't hit too hard at all. But anyway, I think, might you be going through this more when you do?
Yeah, so we just, in my classes, we just finished the brain last week, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the 232 students should be pretty familiar with all the functional areas.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
just sort of reiterating things off it. I look at it all like, wow, really? All that happened in those areas to me, but I'm getting better all the time. The brain is an amazing organ.
Put the last slide up.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, yeah. I was going to do this, but thanks for the reminder. Any questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you talked a lot about the pain. The bullet point above was about the hot and cold. It's not surprising me because I would think that if you had damage in your brain, you'd feel less hot and cold. Do you have any explanation for why you feel more hot or
The
cold?
only thing I've heard
in a
about that is
damaged-
it's become oversensitive as a result of the stroke. So it's really the oversensitivity rather than one getting, I mean, I guess if it happened in a more severe sense, what I've had, at least the areas that's hit my somatosensory areas, it's just sensitive. It hasn't been completely blocked off. It's oversensitive to things like the heat and cold. And
So it's the same thing, your brain's just
No.
trying to protect you from freezing your hand or something.
yeah, but it's overreacting to it. Like to put on, you know, water to wash my hands, like, oh, that's way too cold. No, it's not. It's actually fine. Because then I'll put Righty over there. Righty says, no, it's fine. In fact, I've come up with this little exercise I do myself. When I turn on the water to wash my hands, I put both hands down into the flow. Because Righty knows that it's okay. He's kind of teaching Lefty
Really?
that this is okay. This is okay.
Huh.
I let the water run in between. Occupational therapist said, can I use that on others? I said, yeah, sure. I don't have a patent on it. But, yeah, and it does. It's kind of this retraining the brain to say, it's actually okay. So, yeah, it's a very interesting recovery process. I'm learning a lot of stuff from it. I'm kind of doing it the hard way. But any other questions? Thank you for that. Did that clarify? Yeah.
If you would have had the hemorrhage stroke, would that paralyze you?
Depending on where, from what I know. Now, the further down you go, like any hemorrhage in the brain stem is far more, I mean, brain stem hemorrhage can be deadly right away because of the basic function. As far as up here, yes, if it hit, I'm not a neurologist, so I don't know the details. In fact, I've forgotten all those. It's even through my biology, anatomy, physiology. I was kind of fortunate that this thing broke up into little pieces, and it affected a lot of parts. It wasn't the big part didn't go, cut off blood flow to some very crucial area. And I think a hemorrhagic stroke can be more serious too, because it basically bleeds out, and that affects more in the surrounding tissue. Whereas when you have a clot, it's basically the lack of oxygen has to diffuse. You got not as fast as like when the blood really floods an area. So, from what I can gather, the hemorrhagic stroke can be more serious, and they can, instant paralysis, much more serious. But I was in a way fortunate that mine broke up into little pieces and only affecting smaller areas. So, go ahead.
I have two, if I may.
Go ahead.
First is about, you talked about mindfulness and talking to yourself, especially when you're in public spaces. Do you find that when you're aware of oncoming objects or stimulus, your left side is less reactive to those in terms of the pain and the sensation?
Yeah, I kind of calm it down in advance. I'll sort of take preemptive, say it's okay. Like the whole thing about crossing the road. I used to, as I approached the road, I always use crosswalks now. I used to jaywalk a lot. I used to have a heads up. I'd go, this is going to be okay. I'm coming. And it used to be, even, if you even heard a vehicle coming, but like I get the pain shots. But I can preempt that now. I say it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're not going to get hit by a car. You're not going to get hurt. And there's less pain. There's less of a warning. It's interesting. So sometimes I can talk my brain, calm it down by just using the words to let it know it's going to be okay. And that's the crucial thing about mindfulness, is to let it know that things are okay. And it's going to be okay. That's getting more into the psychology, which I'm less of a background on than what I've experienced. But yeah, it's amazing what the brain, how it listens to itself and responds. So yes, that's a good question. Thank you. Can we get a second one?
How would a hemorrhagic stroke be treated at the hospital versus an ischemic stroke?
Good question.
Could they administer platelets or?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest with you. I really don't know how they treat those. Because my focus was on the ischemic. That's something I'm now going to look up more. And see, I didn't go down too many rabbit holes. I went down a lot of rabbit holes with this thing. how they stem that blood flow, I don't know. I don't think they're gonna give something that helps with clotting, because then that's gonna increase the chance of an ischemic stroke. I'll have to get back, normally if this was my class, I'd go get back to you, but I pass it on to.
I can try to look it up and post it with the YouTube video.
Yeah, 'cause I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Wait.
Question in the back, yeah.
I was wondering, how does stroke rehabilitation in the beginning vary or differ from how it is for you now?
Sorry, say that again?
So you were saying that within like 48 hours after first having the stroke, like rehabilitation can start, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering how that is different, if at all, from how your rehabilitation is
They
now.
started off very simply with getting up, first of all, just getting up out of the bed and making sure you're keeping your balance. And they say, okay, you can do short walks, don't go out of the room. And little exercises, just moving. It just then gets more intense after that, those early ones. The later ones, that's when they actually then assign you to a speech therapist, occupational therapist, and a physical therapist. And then they take you through the more intensive stuff. When I finally got down to Medford, that's what they did. I basically went into the recovery center over at Sante, the inpatient recovery center. And they assigned me a speech therapist, occupational, physical therapist. I had like every day I had my assignments to go meet with them and do things. It was, much more intense, much more focused. And then that played on from there. To this day, I'm still getting the occupational therapist. The physical therapist released me once she saw that I could navigate uneven terrain, stairs, and things like that. But I still be very conscious going up a stair. I do use the railing. So yeah, it just starts off slower with much simpler exercises, and then it's just much more intense, but never overly intense. And that's what they kind of bring you into it. But they want to get you going pretty early, because the earlier the better, as far as you're at least getting going on things. So I had a little bit of therapy up in the Albany Hospital, and then when I got down to Asante, they put me into a full program. And I was there for 2 to 3 months. I'm still doing
So then with like the acupuncturist thing, is that something that like the program had recommended for you?
No,
or
that's something I took on myself, because this thing happened, going on 3 years ago, and I still have the pain. A month or so ago, back at the end of the fall, I said, I'm tired of this. And it wasn't really getting better with the things I was doing, so I went looking into acupuncture. So that's something I took the initiative myself on doing, and I got a hold of a practice down in Ashland, and I think it was music to my ears when I got in contact with the acupuncturist. That he said, yes, I do deal with central post-stroke pain, and I have dealt with that before. And that was great to hear. Wow, that's what I'm looking for. Because the pharmaceuticals really didn't work. Physical therapy and occupation seemed to be making progress. I need something to relieve that pain. And I think that's, right now, I think that's the big thing. That and the mindfulness that I've also looked into myself. A lot of things, I have this also little mantra, heal thyself too. You're getting all this help. You're seeking, you're also going to, look into things yourself and take action from there. So the mindfulness and the occupational side, acupuncture, I've got that going myself. But I feel that they are really helping. So that's why I go plug to the Eastern medicine. Western medicine, they've done wonderful things. They, got me in the emergency room, and got me going. Eastern medicine also has a lot to offer. At least that's what I'm finding.
Are you able to provide like an explanation of how acupuncture works?
No. It's very complicated. Now that's one thing I cannot explain. I mean, that's
Just magic.
it's just not, So I do this thing called they do dry needling on me.
Yes.
And they go to various parts of my body each time. And I don't know. I just know it works.
Tell them about the ozone.
Oh, then, oddly enough, I don't know how this fit in. They also give me ozone. Here's what's interesting. They put a little tube up my nose and give me ozone. Very low dose. In fact, I asked myself, wait a second, how much of that are you going to give me? And they looked up, she said, 24 micrograms per milliliter in terms of the concentration in the gas, then an inert gas too, because ozone. But, and then I went down a bunch of rabbit holes on that. I mean, the acupuncture said, well, it's going to trigger your immune system to help tone down any sort of sensations of inflammation that your brain might be feeling or think it's feeling. So it's operating more on the, it's again, these sort of contrasting things, these paradoxical things. It causes very slight inflammation, which then gets the brain to, no, it's not that bad, calm down. I don't really feel anything. Give it to me, it's like, other than the odor, which is a bit strange. It's not like it's a really nasty smell. It's like, I hardly know it's there. But it somehow is usually tricking the brain and the immune system into saying everything's okay, that's not that bad. That's something that the whole acupuncture thing is the thing I know the least about. Whenever I've looked things up, I get lost really quickly. I tried to blend it to doing searches on neuropathophysiology of acupuncture. Big mistake, right? You don't get a lot of things about neuropathophysiology that they rarely ever connect it up with. When I did get a connection with that in acupuncture, it was things about Eastern mindfulness, Eastern meditations and stuff like that. But as far as the actual studies they've done, I think it's hard. I'm sure it's hard to do. But that's why I started to see books on that. Then we went down to the mindfulness effects rather than the physiology. I think that'd be a hard thing to study, I think. And at one point, I was considering going down and getting, and the pain was getting to me so much. I looked all over the place for different things. And there was something down in San Francisco, at the University of California, San Francisco, where they were going to go in, they could go in and use magnetic stimulation to thalamic areas. And I was willing to do that. Just like, yeah, drill some holes. But then they took me through the screening process between the things I was already getting, and at that point it was some of the pharmaceuticals, the occupational and physical, and I was showing progress. There was a clinical study down there. They said, well, you're really not eligible. Plus, I would have had to live down there, because they were going to follow up every 2 weeks, and you couldn't quite squeeze living in San Francisco.
It was quite cool with him having holes drilled in his head.
I do have one last question.
Go ahead.
So with acupuncture, is it similar to physical therapy where, they establish a plan with you
Yes.
and you meet multiple times a week, but then is it for a limited amount of time?
That's what they do. They come up with a plan for me. And we met twice a week. I've only finished that relatively recently, twice a week for 10 weeks. And because we're seeing progress, I chose to back off. I can go in to get sort of follow-ups, but that's at my choice, because I was seeing good progress with that. And so at least for now, I've backed off of that. But just physical exercise. I try to do my mile a day. I think that's also very important.
Tell them about the mirror. I love that one.
That's part of the occupational therapy. So one of the exercises I do with them is a mirror exercise. And you put put up a mirror. I put my left hand behind the mirror. And with my right, I do things. Because then that looks like my left is doing it in the mirror. And that's supposed to be, again, kind of tricking the brain, although it's not, it's really educating the brain. That this is how it should be. Because you think you see your left hand. In fact, sometimes I've sworn there was something in my hand, or I was actually doing that with my left hand. And I go, no, that's your right doing that. And I find that really interesting. I manipulate something, tap. And then I sometimes do the mirrorless version of that. I just do this. But I can't carry a mirror around. Little thing in my hand. It's very interesting. I find that things like that fascinating. That you kind of, you're re-educating the brain, but you're also kind of forming tricks on it in a way. But it's all, therapeutic. It's all techniques they've come up with to help you, resolve that pain, get the brain calmed down, retrain it, to get those new pathways established, to get back to what you used to have, as far as how you sense and take on pain and stimulation with that. So but that was definitely more of a part of it. Yes, go ahead.
I'm a big yoga advocate, and a lot of people say, well, it's just stretching, but it's not. It's strength and balance. Have you ever thought about yoga?
I actually do that, but I call it woga.
Yoga, do tell.
Wade's form of yoga.
Okay,
I take the basic ideas, and then I kind of modify them. Because some I can't do.
Well, there's a million that everybody can't do. It's never ending.
So I do the milder version, or I do chair yoga, chair yoga. So I've invented that. But I think I do that every day too. It's the whole stretching and the movements, and also I do Tai Chi. But I haven't changed the name of that. Well, I guess I do walking. I do walking Tai Chi. I walk through the house and do this. But it helps. It's all about a matter of the brain getting back to normal. Time to calm down. So I have my own versions of things that I try too. Again, I think it's my multi-pronged approach to getting this pain to go away. And it is fading. Slowly fading. I'm getting better at getting my confidence back as far as getting out and being the full Wade again, or the old Wade.
The question over here in that blue shirt, yeah.
I was just curious, has it been mentioned, even with all the pharmaceutical treatments and like the physical therapy, are you at risk for another TIA, or how much of a risk you're at for another one?
Yes, well, there's nothing, it was one of from the get-go that there's no guarantees. As far as never having a stroke again, or even TIA. I'm doing all I can. I'm taking the statins, which are going to keep my blood fats, cholesterol, and triglycerides down. And the vascular surgeon, he said there's no guarantees. Just keep doing what you're doing with your diet. Keep on the statins. And then
Baby aspirin to stop the platelets
oh
getting
yeah,
sticky.
I am taking. They had me on a very strong blood thinner, which I'd always said it's actually not a thinner, it's an anticoagulant. And then they took me off that and got me on just the low dose aspirin, which prevents the platelets from sticking. They don't want sticky platelets in there. So between hopefully avoiding the big clots from forming, I'm also keeping the little platelets in check. So if something does happen, they don't get sticky in there and cause a problem. So I'm happy with the low dose aspirin. It's a lot less expensive than the Eliquis was the thing they had me on, which was the Cadillac of blood thinners. Very expensive too. Luckily I have good insurance. Cadillac, good analogy to use.
All right, we've got time for maybe one more. Eileen?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Have you tried or have you changed your diet in any way since the stroke?
Not really, because it always was a good diet. It was always try to keep it low fat. My wife and I always still eat pretty much what we always used to eat. Never deprived, keeping it balanced. Um, trying to just not, keep away from the saturated fats. Not completely, but to keep everything in moderation and all, sort of rule of thumb. So, sometimes people have asked me, what do you think were the things that really contributed to this? I said, well, multiple things. Part genes. My dad had a mild stroke when he was like in his early 60s. It really didn't do much to him. He was very lucky. So part genetic. Stress. I said stress, I think, was a biggie. Because I always tried to make sure I had everything right, every little thing. And it was a lot of it was unnecessary. Keep the good diet. I just had one. I reduced the alcohol. I never drank that much anyway. So keep it with the meals. That's okay. A little bit of wine, a little bit of beer. But I think the stress was the big one. Not being able to sort of chill down about things when I should have. All my life as a teacher, I was always like, gotta get that right. Gotta get that in on time. Gotta make sure that's graded. With everything. It's like, gotta get the truck, gotta get the truck in for servicing. Like, slow down. In fact, now I have a little mantra, slow down, please, slow down. But again, it's multi-pronged. There's a lot of things that can contribute to it. But diet's important. Mindfulness, keeping the stress down. All those things, I think, are just going to keep me out of the emergency room again.
You mentioned that you're walking at least 1 mile a day now. Did you used to do it before, or that's part of your new things?
Could have been better at exercise. I would do my hikes, like up in the hills, like up in Britt. And if I went off camping, I'd hike. I did a lot of hiking. I didn't have a set program though, other than walking the dog every day. I think I could have been better at that too. So I think for people to, kind of try to avoid all this is exercise, good diet, low stress or no stress ideally. I think it's hard to do these days. A little bit of stress is good, but so yeah, I didn't really. I could have had a better, more regular exercise program. Any other questions? You guys have been great.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you guys for listening in.
All right, well, thank you, Wade. We'll give him a...
I'd like to say something, if I may.
Corey, for providing this opportunity. I want to thank my wife, too. She helps me with so many things.
And I want to say something as well. I think the one thing I'd like everybody to take away from this is that stroke can happen to anybody at any age. Unfortunately, we've met people of all ages. We've met 15-year-olds that had a stroke. We've met people in their 30s that had strokes. And the warning signs are very obvious. Any slurring of the be fast is one of the most important things. And so if you have any concern with anybody that you see or aware of, get them to the hospital as quickly as possible.
Even if it's a false alarm.
Even if it's a false alarm. They, when we walked into the emergency room, the lady started to give me papers to fill out. And I said, aren't you going to triage him? And she said, no. And I said, I think he's having a stroke. They took him past everybody. And there were children in there that needed it. But please be aware that it happens to anybody at any age. And time is of the essence to get people in. Even if, I mean, at one stage I thought he drank too much, was slurring, and it was a TIA. And as I said, it can happen at any age. There's very little education about it, particularly around here as well. So just make yourselves aware.
Carol would really like to do more as far as promoting that, because getting the
There's
word
more
out there.
support
Part of
groups.
that's why I did this today, is to get the word out there too.
Yeah, it's very important to get the word out there and for you to be aware.
Thank you. We're done with our hour. There's snacks and drinks. If you didn't get any, make sure you sign the sign-in sheet on the back counter. You're more than welcome to stick around if you want to come look at the brain models or chat with Wade or Carol.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your help, Marissa, with the technical stuff. I would have had a